CMO Forum is something that we kicked off last year. The intent was to provide some value to those of you in the industry that are not in R&D. Right? Most of what we do at SID at Display Week is R&D related. So we wanted to have, that's why we have the business track, which is this year done jointly with DSCC, and that's why we have the CMO Forum to provide you some value for those of you that are in the sales, marketing, supply chain, and other disciplines that is outside of the technology area. With that, let me introduce our panel. And as I introduce, I would request the panel to come up to the podium and take your seat. First, Justin Kalvitz is Senior Vice President at Kent Displays. Welcome, Justin. I don't intend to today go through their entire bio. You have it in the program, you can read it, but in their introduction, they will tell you a little bit about themselves. Dr. Mark Verrall is Senior Vice President at Merck. Welcome, Mark. Bahar Wadia is President of Visionox USA. Welcome, Bahar. You know, we can't have two Shris, but we do. Shri Subramanian is Senior Vice President of Technology for Technicolor. So our intent with this panel is to talk about this theme that Tara came about. Tara decided to comprise this idea of content meets display, right? Because we are here in LA, in the heart of the film industry, and film people use displays, and we enjoy a lot of aspects of the display is enjoyed through some of the content. So that was the intent, that is the theme, and we're going to maintain that particular theme. So I'm going to ask each of the panel members to briefly introduce themselves and tell us what brought them to this particular industry and why they are doing what they are doing. We'll start with you, Justin.
Great, thanks. Start with the new guy. So I'm relatively new to the industry. I've only been in the category for about 2 years. And prior to that, I spent about 25 years in sales, marketing, product development with more of the Fortune companies, Sherwin-Williams, Newell Rubbermaid, Bemis Corporation. And I thought a lot about this question is what brought me to this industry, and what attracted me is, and it's total luck. I was big companies. I was always sort of the big traditional brand marketing, product development, traditional cycles. And I had some opportunities where a company got sold off. I wanted to do something a little different. Had been on the commercial side of things with Bemis Corporation, the consumer side with Sherwin-Williams and Rubbermaid. And I wanted to do something a little different, so I was looking for a different type of company, and quite honestly, I got lucky. I saw this opportunity with the amazing people and amazing technology that wasn't out there, and I thought, could I possibly be part of this? Being able to establish a new platform, being able to bring new technologies to people. And to this day, I still feel so lucky to be part of it. I'm still learning, I'm still growing, and getting to understand it all, but it's total luck. Just pleasure and blessed to be part of it.
Wonderful. How about you, Mark?
Okay, I'm not quite so new in the industry. I had more than 25 years working in the technology and research and development of liquid crystals and other display-related materials. So I'm sitting up here as an R&D guy, and you just said that this is not R&D. Just because I'm a technology person doesn't mean that I'm not also very passionate about the content, about the usage, about the applications, and it's actually that drove me into this business and kept me here. So 25 years has seen fantastic changes in the display industry, and I expect another 25 years of fantastic changes in the display industry as well. So if I can survive that long, I'll be there.
I'm sure you will. Bahar?
So, like Mark, I've spent pretty much my entire life in the HMI business, specifically because I find HMIs very fascinating. They track human progress. They're a great proxy for human progress. And as of recent, displays have become an indispensable part of ourselves. I mean, they are how we pretty much connect to the rest of the world. And so that's what brought me to this space, specifically with Visionox as an OLED company. So.
Yeah, well, first of all, good morning to you, to all of you. You know, I'm a product device guy, so slightly different. I've spent most of my career with semiconductor companies and smart devices, and you know, I've seen the evolution of displays from. Personally, I had some of the first x86 computers, and it's just been really fascinating to me. Display is what really brings out the life of a device, right? And that's what attracted me to Technicolor. You know, there's a lot of focus on not just the device, but also the content side. That's in fact the theme of this panel, and it's exciting to see the future evolve with more and more, you know, innovations in display. Combine that with AI, it's very exciting. So.
Thank you. Probably this is true for some of you, and it's definitely true for me, other than the fact that we had a change in moderator. This morning, we also had another crisis that I was dealing with. I was up until maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I'm not a morning person. So here's something that I do, and those of you, just like John Lamanchuk, who's in the audience that was here last year at our forum, I believe that we absorb information better when we got a little bit more blood flowing through us, more oxygen. Okay, this is what we're going to do. And it's optional. If you're holding a cup of coffee, you may want to put it down. I would like everybody, those that are able, to please stand up, including my panel, please. And if you're in the middle of the aisle, you may want to, or middle of the, yeah, just get out into the open, because what I'd like to do, put your hands up in the air this way. Let me see, I'm not covering Justin. And I'm going to have every one of us jump up and down 30 times. Okay? Follow my cue. And you know, if your feet hurt and if you're tired and if you've got a medical condition, don't do it. Others, you're going to go up and down. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
All right.
Good morning.
That looked great from up here.
No, Joel, we're not doing push-ups. I have found that for me, when I speak, whether I'm on the phone or in a panel like this, I'm supposed to be seated, but it's very hard. When I talk, I always get up, I keep moving. And this has helped me. I can, and I'm a little bit out of breath, but my energy level is significantly higher than it was just a moment ago. But thank you for participating. Our first question to the panel is, how dependent is our display industry on content, and vice versa? Right? Sri, would you like to take that?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I see a strong dependency between the two, right? It's almost a chicken and egg kind of situation where if you don't have good content, you can't really bring it out on the device that might have a really good display, and vice versa. You know, a good example of that is on the VR market today. You see a lot of big players roll out VR HMD devices that are great, but there's a little bit of a lack of content today, and you know, there's a theme going on that only when the content comes in, you're going to see a penetration of VR devices in the market. And at Technicolor, you know, we are working with some of the high-end content that's going to help the market for VR. But when you look at the UGC and the mass market devices and content, you know, we still have a way to go. So I see a couple of years for VR to take off because of the whole content meets display kind of thing. So that's, you know, I feel there's really tight coupling between the two. Bahar?
Mark, you are you know, in the industry, and Sri represents the content side more than the display industry per se. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I have to agree there's a chicken and egg here. If you look at the large-sized TVs you can find in the market now, you have fantastic resolution TV. But most of us don't have a signal or content that can really do justice to this technology. But in this case, you've got the technical side driving forward the capability to present a resolution that we don't yet have in the case of most signals. And in other cases, you find that the content is really ahead of the technology, right. but they drive each other. I think without it, you don't get innovation, you don't get the move forward. So it's absolutely critical that both sides of this game keep pushing forward, driving the other one forward.
I think so too. Please go ahead.
There's also the user part of the equation that we sometimes miss. If you think about it, the largest growing segment in content is small content that we consume over, say, YouTube or personal devices or tablets, and that segment is growing, and the displays have gotten quite nice in the small format to enjoy the content. And it's easy to create content, and there is this change that's also occurring that that ties the two together: usability with the advancements in smaller displays, and then the ability to consume content anywhere.
When we talk about content, one of the interesting things that's happening in the market is the whole aspect of AR, VR, and to create some immersive content to, you know, so that these displays are better utilized and there's greater value. Bahar, what do you think is the future of augmented reality?
So AR, VR is awesome. You come to any one of these shows and you'll enjoy a great demo. The problem is it's a great demo. It's not an indispensable tool, and until it becomes an indispensable tool, it cannot be successful. So think about it. Is the AR, VR that you've seen here something that you would turn around your car, go back home because you left it? No. I mean, I have a few of these, and after the first couple of weeks of, oh, this is awesome, they just sit in the drawer. And I think a lot of folks, even yesterday, Clay talked about it, there's a combination of hardware and software and content that all have to come together. And purpose-driven applications, I believe, will start to drive real use cases. One of the companies I'm involved with, Quake Tech, we make augmented reality for firefighters by leveraging the early vision and late vision of how the brain processes information. And this allows firefighters to go in and out of fires 5 times faster. This is meaningful. This becomes an indispensable tool. So granted, it's a very small use case compared to the consumer market. But when you start thinking about it in terms of how am I going to solve this problem so it becomes an indispensable tool, then it becomes awesome. Otherwise, it's just awesome trade show demos.
Of course.
And I think that's the same thing as you talk about all these great technologies, is how do you make it in the fabric of consumers' lives or people's lives? And you know, it's interesting because people want 70-inch televisions and they want to walk into the information and they want this amazing stuff, but the real life applications come down to little things. And how do you make it more, you know, when you get in your car, when you train somebody for a new job, and I think when that technology meets the everyday little things for people's lives that become ingrained, that's what ends up exploding this to, now it's mass market, now it's ingrained in our lives, now it's your phone that you can't get rid of. And I think that's that next step that we're moving towards, but until it becomes more than just a trade show demo and something very cool.
Absolutely. Well, unlike maybe the semiconductor industry and folks who write software and so on and so forth, when you buy a consumer device, sometimes if your product was semiconductor, it's hidden inside the device. You can kind of point out to the particular product that you were personally involved in designing. Display is the face of pretty much all the products where it is used, so you can you know, proudly talk about your product. Yet, when you package a device with the display, you no longer see the display, you see a package. Justin is running marketing for Kent Displays, where the product is packaged. You've got a lot of background in trying to convince consumers to adopt a product, not based on the product's functionality, but also the first-time buyers who look at the package. Tell us your experience in the consumer space.
Well, it's a constant challenge because you first have to create the perception of what the product even does, and then you have to ingrain it with them of here's how I can use that in my life, or here's how it's important to me. And you have 3 seconds, if you're lucky, for somebody to actually look at a box in a store with 100,000 products, and they don't even know the technology exists. So it's, I always talk about it as puzzle pieces in terms of explaining and creating demand for products, whether it's a phone, whether it's a technology, whether it's a widget. You have to put all the pieces together, and the package is that piece that tells your story when you're not there. And the visuals and the branding and the marketing behind it. All these things are minor little decisions that you make that all go together to create demand, to create interest, to create somebody who says, oh, I think I saw that. Oh, wow, that's cool, let me pick up the box. Well, then when you pick up the box, now what do you say to them? So there's all these levels of information that you have to communicate in a lot of different ways. Great products fail all the time, we know that. Great ideas fail all the time, we know that. Sometimes it's because you didn't communicate the message in the box. Sometimes it's because you didn't think about the user. Sometimes it's because you weren't able to get the message out there in a mass market kind of way. But that package and being able to tell that story is so critical, at least from the consumer experience, that it's probably the single most impactful thing you do, even though the technology is so amazing.
Yes, absolutely.
In terms of the consumers.
And it's even harder if you are in Mark's position at Merck, making liquid crystal material that goes inside a component on the device. And Mark, when you think about these kind of things, you look at the market. A few years ago, you couldn't buy a TV without 3D capability. Today, it's the other way around. It's very hard to find them. Right, and it came and went very quickly. Yeah. How do you anticipate this? How does somebody in the audience that has the exact same problem as you, how do they anticipate this?
Okay, I think the 3D TV at home was a really interesting example of this content and technology not quite meeting at the right time in the right place. If you ask people, would you like to watch your TV in 3D? Everyone will say yes. But people are fundamentally lazy, and if you have to do something really hard, like putting on a pair of glasses and sitting with a new pair of glasses on top of your existing ones, people give up very quickly. Like you say, it goes in the drawer, it stays in the drawer. I think the key is to either have the fantastic content, which will then really drive people to put up with a little bit of hardship, where, because there's so much wonderful 3D stuff out there to watch, and it doesn't feel the same without it, then they will put up with the hardship of this. Or you do the other way around. You create such a good visual experience that actually the content isn't the key point, and people want to use it every day anyway. So I think this is a lesson for everyone involved in the industry, that we really look at that 3D example and we say, how do we avoid that next time with augmented reality, virtual reality, and so on, and not to end up with a lot of people with their VR headset stuck in the drawer, never being used. Let's try and make sure that we develop both the content and the technology to be really comfortable and more than just exciting. It's got to be essential, as you say.
And Shri, you look at this display industry from the outside, in some sense. So what are the pain points that consumers are facing in the marketplace from your perspective?
Yeah, I think to me there are three points, and actually related to what Mark said. The first is also cost, right? So major pain point is cost to the consumer. If I look at 3D, one of the major issues was also the barrier to entry for a consumer. You got a 3D TV, which was like a couple of $1,000, and to get one, then wear your glasses, it was difficult. If you look at VR, there is the Oculus, which is $1,000, but there's also the mobile VR, which is fastly picking up like Daydream, which is like $100. So the barrier to entry is low. So that's a key pain point the consumer is always focusing on. But then the second is seamless quality of display, right? So we are remodeling our house, and we are putting a skylight. I'm in the Bay Area, and I was just a few days back, I was looking at the display. It's a solar-controlled skylight, and that display, you won't believe it's like this really old, not a color display, but it's it gives this experience as though it's like 20 years back, and then I have my iPhone next to it, and it's not a seamless experience, especially with IoT. You're seeing so many displays at your home. And like the Nest and all, you want this seamless experience, right? And the third major pain point to me is health issues, right? So you have this VR glass right in front of your eyes. I'm sure Mark from Merck can relate to this, but there's a lot of people who are concerned about their kids wearing these displays right in front, and what are the health issues? With the phone, there's the issue of your neck. The concerns there, but what happens to the eyes and all that. So to me, these are the three pain points that consumers are
absolutely. So turning to somebody that's been in the display industry for a long time and understands these things, what is going to change and what innovation should we expect, Bahar?
Well, first of all, to Sri's point, the experience needs to be seamless. And for the experience to be seamless, displays have to get thinner and lighter and flexible and almost non-existent. They have to just be there without being there. So that's the one thing we'll certainly see in the innovation space. The other thing is higher PPIs. You need to have those higher PPIs. All of the phones, all the devices that we have, and I've tried out all. Many of the devices from Verrall, Meta, the HoloLens, and after about 4 or 5 minutes, so beyond the trade show, you really want to sit down in a room and use it for half an hour, it hurts your eyes. It is very stressful. And so the pixel densities really have to get very high. And there are other elements of how the brain processes the information that also have to be taken into account, which could bridge the gap between what's possible with technology today and keeping costs in line. So you're not building these expensive systems that maybe only the government can afford. So that's definitely going to happen, I believe, in this space. For VR to come about.
So anytime you do a panel like this, the moderator had the opportunity to speak to all the panelists, to understand their background and create some content so that they're not pausing and waiting to answer the question. Some of these questions have been thought out. Since I came new into this, my style is that I always pose questions that they're not prepared for. So I already threatened them this morning, but I'll give you a very short notice. I won't ask the question. I'll tell you what the question is going to be, and I'll ask that a little bit later. This is an industry where we recognize a lot of technical contributions, not as much people that have had commercial contributions. So keep in mind, I'm going to ask you a question about who are some of the people that you can think of that have contributed in the broad technology industry that has inspired you personally. Okay, you don't have to answer it now. I'll give you a little bit of warning. So what is missing in the whole film to display cycle? And any of you can take the question, whoever feels that you have a strong point to make in this space.
Sure, I can start. It's related to the question earlier you mentioned about content versus display, right? And to me, it's almost decoupled these days. The display industry versus the capture and the content side, right? If you look at the trends in computer vision, light field, and camera technologies, it's going at a really fast rate. And then to me, it's not really linked with the innovation on the display side. And when you look at like Technicolor, for example, we work with the studios, and we ensure that the movies that you see in the theater is both good quality content being displayed well. But when you look at UGC content on your smartphones, and I think there's still that missing gap there between guys like Visionox creating the display, but then there's the content being shot by let's say Nokia Ozo camera, or it's just not completely linked. That's what I think.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
The other thing is also the use of the content. So when you think about a movie, right? Today we watch a movie from the director's perspective. That's your movie. The director completely controls your experience. But once you change that and you create this augmented reality, and now you've created this infinite contextual reality, now you're in the movie, right? So awesome if you're watching a little bit of a demo, but what happens when you're actually watching a movie and you're looking around all over the place, and maybe you may leave the scene and go somewhere else? Well, what happens then? And so, yes, you can say, well, there are virtual reality games that we play, so sure, but then it's not a movie, it's a game. And so now what is the story? And do you create all these infinite stories? And how do you solve that problem? And there's opportunity. It's not just a problem. There's also an opportunity to create these, let's just say, dynamic movies, for lack of a better sense, that are somewhat curated, lightly curated. But this is the opportunity and the interesting interest that could spin off. And to Sri's point, there has to be this continuity between the content and the hardware. And sometimes we tend to forget the user because we get so carried away with our own technologies, patting ourselves on the back because we created this awesome stuff. But at the end of the day, it's the user we need to worry about. And that's what's important. I think if we start, as an industry, spending more time understanding how users experience our technology, I think we will accelerate some of the innovations faster than simply trying to make it cheaper or simply trying to advertise ourselves out of it. And I don't mean to minimize any of those efforts, but when users find things indispensable, it moves the industry forward.
And I would also say, I think we have to consider these young generations now, for whom the content is a very different concept.
Yes.
So they don't always expect a director to prepare a nice film.
Yes.
They're more than happy to take their mobile device.
That's correct.
And make their own content constantly. I was at the airport the other day, and there was a little group of 4 or 5 youngsters, all under the age of 25, together, but each of them with their own mobile phones, taking little videos of themselves, photographing themselves. And actually, when we talk about content, I think to create devices and technology that enable next generations to create their own type of content is actually really important to give that experience.
You look at the fastest growing trends in kids under the age of 15, and it's actually watching YouTube. They're no longer watching TV, they're no longer watching shows or programs, and even the Netflix trends and things are starting to go away because kids want shorter, more interesting things that they control themselves, that they can share with their friends. It's it's that 1 to 3 minute clip that is just amazing that gets 10 million views. Well, now how do you take all the stuff that you guys are working on and the content and the capabilities and put it in the hands of an 8-year-old and say, now you go do this. Now you create something that's 3-dimensional. Now you create something that you walk into, that you show your friends your room in a 3-dimensional way. Now you've just created something that 100 million kids want.
Well, it's so true. I mean, when you talk about content, whether it's the experience that you had in the airport and otherwise, I belong to a news group with friends that went to engineering school with me, and we talk about a number of different subjects. But when I go to events like this, I take pictures of all the different displays and different technologies and share all of this stuff. And to me, it's a big deal. And when I share it on Facebook or some other, like I get 3 clicks. Occasionally, one of those clicks is somebody that works for me. They're being polite. But on the other hand, one time I wrote about a chili pepper that was quite spicy. And I wrote about this. And within an hour, I had 100 clicks. Right, so it is. I think the content has to be very personal and touch related. I think this trend is definitely going to continue, and so let's go to that question that I had previously threatened you with. in any order, tell me, somebody in the industry, a broad industry, that has inspired you personally, that has, you continue to seek inspiration, that has, sort of been supportive in your career. Bahar, you're not shy, so we'll start with you.
It sounds, well, it sounds comical, maybe, but, well, Steve Jobs, okay, for lots of reasons. But really two main reasons. One, he showed the general electronics industry to focus on the consumer. And I start my day focusing on my customers, and that's important. That's where I start. That's where I think about if I'm solving problems. Right? And then the second thing is, how do you actually make a business out of it? That's the other thing that's important. Solve a problem for the customer that's meaningful and make a business out of it. So that's what inspired me. That's what I liked.
Who wants to go next?
Oh, well, I'll come at this from a little different angle as the new guy in the industry. I have to say, and I'll plug our team. Our R&D team for me was eye-opening. You know, I've done a lot of R&D in terms of product development and new platforms, and I've launched technologies worth $500 million that never existed before, and things like that. That's all wonderful, but coming to this industry and sitting and pulling back the curtain with our R&D team and seeing what these guys do and the capabilities, it challenges me to try and figure out, how do I take these ideas and this amazing capability with our group and be able to put it in the hands of consumers in a way that makes sense? And it really is amazing. I mean, every day walking through the labs, walking through the rooms where these guys are brainstorming, it inspires me to go out there and go, we got to get this in the hands of people. We have to take these capabilities, because people don't get to see that. People don't understand all that goes into this, this little display thing that you can write on for us and say, oh, that should cost 50 cents out of China, and it's no big deal, and it's just a flat piece of plastic. But when you understand all the technologies that go into this, the consumer world, I don't think, really truly appreciates all that goes into these little things. And for me, it's just really exciting to me, because it challenges me, because you want to take these brilliant people's ideas and put them in the hands of consumers in a way that makes sense. Absolutely. And just keep driving and bringing out new stuff, because it's just fun. It's just that every day coming to this group, that's why I'm so excited about it.
I've had very similar situations where I've been inspired by R&D in many of the companies I've worked with. And we're very fortunate today in this audience. We have the head of your company's R&D here. Dr. Khan, would you please stand up and be recognized? Thank you for inspiring your marketing head. Mark.
Yeah, actually, I don't want to bring one person, because rather like you, I think there's so many people who inspire me. But I'll tell you a short story. I was working maybe more than 10 years ago in Asia. I won't even say which country, but I was working with a group of guys who were trying to break a breakthrough in display. They were the hardest working people I've ever met. You wouldn't know them by name. They were the guys in the white lab coats working in the back rooms, and they would work from 8 o'clock in the morning until midnight, and they would say, oh, Dr. Verrall, we must take you home to your hotel for the night. We will stay and finish the work after midnight. Fall asleep on the floor, literally, in front of the equipment, to get a few hours sleep before getting up the next morning to try and solve the problems, bring the displays that we now take for granted. When you go to the supermarket, you push your trolley along and you take some bread and some rice and some cornflakes and a 36-inch TV, and you just push it to the counter. We take it for granted. The work that has gone into preparing and developing these displays is phenomenal, and I would take my hat off to every person who's contributed in that same way to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no single person. Of course, there are the visionaries like Jobs or Musk, and they're truly inspiring. But to me, being in Silicon Valley, I've just seen the last several years especially the last 5 years or so, is just incredible innovation, and the people, startups, coming with new trends, combining AI and computer vision, display technologies is just very fascinating to me, and there's a lot of hard work being put in to get those things to the consumer, and yeah, I mean, it's just it continues to. I was at Google I/O last week, and the people there are just mind-boggling, right? I mean, you compare it to like 15, 20 years back versus now. What's happening is just constant new languages, new technologies. I mean, I heard of this language called Kotlin, and everyone was like, big praise. I mean, not related to display, but it's under the hood. This is fascinating to me, and I just feel that all of this coming together really pushes the boundaries, right?
Oh, wonderful. So, coming back to our theme for today, starting with you, Justin, what's next?
Should I ask Dr. Khan?
He's now wishing he hadn't shown up in the CMO Forum.
It's the CMO Forum, not the CTO.
Thought I was going to get out of that one. From our perspective, I think it's, I've sort of been the cheerleader for this idea of everyday items and everyday things that change your everyday habits. For us, it's obviously cheaper, thinner, but it's more importantly for us, it's more real. We strive every day to try and recreate real experiences in the writing platforms and in the display feel, and when you can get something that somebody's done for 2,000 years, make it electronic, but make it feel like that 2,000-year-old experience, you've now taken everything 10 levels up for the consumer user. And I think that's something that we continue to push for, is how do we create something that feels more natural, feels more real. The trends in the industry are amazing in terms of integrating technology into our world, but you also see a very, very big trend in consumers want to get back to touching and feeling and experiencing and being able to get back to what they know. As much as everybody loves technology, there's also this concern, this fear. We don't touch anything, we don't write anything, we don't shake hands anymore, we don't talk anymore. And I think all that stuff starts to come together to create a challenge for us in the industry.
So. For me, it's a personal one, actually. It's not really driven by technology or content. It's driven by old age. What I would love is a really nice, simple, augmented reality where, for example, in this conference, when I come up and I meet you and I think, I know this person, it's Bob, Bill, Jim. Inside my glasses, a little thing says, yeah, it's Robert. You met him last week at the dinner. I mean, I think we would all have different uses for it, but a really nice, simple augmented reality, something which works, which is comfortable, which feels no worse than the glasses I wear now, but which gives me a little bit of extra advice and can remind me of things that I should have been doing, or perhaps reading my emails while I'm talking to you 3 years. That's what I really want.
Awesome.
And we're not far off, actually. Yeah. If you look at what's possible now, the technology is there. It's just a bit clumsy. We have to refine it. We have to make that final step where you turn it into a really refined product and a refined usage experience. And then, in a few years' time, it'll be like your mobile phone. You can't believe you existed without it in the past.
So, I'm involved in a number of different things, but specifically to the display industry and with Visionox, the big thing, I shouldn't say the big thing, the thing that we're working on constantly is to democratize OLEDs. OLEDs are still a technology that's a little bit hard to get if you're not the big companies, and we see a different future. We see OLEDs solving the kinds of problems that cannot be solved with the other display solutions that are out there, and we're getting closer and closer and closer. And part of it is the strategic commitment that we have towards making display technologies that may be limited to only a handful of large customers available to people wanting one, available to people wanting 1,000, 10,000, it really doesn't matter. So that's a business decision that was made by Visionox, and we're very proud of that. So that's the one thing we're focused on is so that the more OLED displays are in the hands of the tinkerers, the engineers, the more input we can get on how they can be made better. The startups that can't afford to engage with maybe a Samsung or an LG because you don't have an order for $1 million. Well, how do you get these technologies exploited and the experience around that to make it better and better and better? So that's kind of what we're focused on.
Yeah, I'm with Mark on the wearable computing side of things. You know, I want to see always-on wearable computers that's with miniature lenses and holographs in front of you. I think that's going to happen. It's something that, you know, I compare movies that several years back. You know, if you remember things like Knight Rider, way back. You know, there's a watch that was there at that time, right? And then Jetsons, right, with you have these driverless vehicles, and of course there's like the Iron Man kind of thing where you have holographs and the wearable computer. So I think those are going to happen, especially with AI coming into the mix. It's just you know, we are in this precious time where we can actually see all that coming to life. So.
No, it's so true. So instead of waiting towards the very end, we have a few more minutes. I'm going to pause and see if there are any specific questions from the audience to this panel before I go into closing comments from the team. John is correct. There is a Stephen, you can follow John.
So, Mark, I'm really glad you brought up the 3D experience. I wanted to ask the panel to drill down a little bit more to that. We had fabulous hardware. We had fabulous content. Every major motion picture came out in 3D. There were non-glasses 3Ds that if you sat at the right node, looked okay. But the passive matrix with 4K displays that looked great and were very light. And I get your point about AR. You know, I want my whole car windshield to warn me about pedestrians who I'm about to plow into and all those things. But why is VR going to be different than 3D? People are talking about there's no content yet, but we had content for 3D and we had devices and they were less clumsy to use. But I haven't heard why VR is not going to go down that path. So maybe if you guys could drill into that a little bit more.
Wait, I personally think it goes back to the cost, which I mentioned earlier, right? And barrier to entry is significantly important to the consumer. And you look at the companies that are investing in creating these mobile solutions. I mean, you get a smartphone today, which pretty much everyone has. You buy a cardboard, $50. Nowadays it's even free. And you get a VR experience. I mean, think about 3D, right? You had to buy something much more expensive, and you had to. It's not something that you would give your kids, and I mean, you could, but it was much more expensive. To me, cost is key, critical, and you're going to see the Oculus kind of experience go to that $100 mark very soon. You know, Google just announced their all-in-one VR headset that's going to be much more affordable, and then of course the content plays into that hand in hand. But to me, that's absolutely critical.
Yeah, I think from a technology standpoint, and this is coming from the marketing guy who doesn't know the tech as well as you guys do by any means, but you know, I think from a cost standpoint, I agree. People are willing to buy something for $20 because it's cool or fun or interesting. And if I may not use it very much, but when my friends come over, it's cool to showcase when we're having a beer with our neighbors. All of a sudden, when it's $1,000, now why does it impact my life? Why do I want to use it? How am I going to use it more often than just as a toy? And I think that the cost is a really big factor in a lot of these things, and just consumer behavior patterns is as the cost comes down, the barrier to what am I going to use it for also come down.
The other thing is also the usage model. So when you look at a 3D TV, it's content and individual use or multiple use, and you're right there and everybody's looking at the same thing. Once you start getting into virtual reality, you could be in the space with other friends. You can connect that. It's a very personal device, so the scalability is much higher, assuming the cost can come down. Now, the four of us could be wearing those and being in the same space, interacting in different ways. So now it creates for an experience that 3D can't give because it's very passive. One of the things that the company I'm involved with, we go scale volcanoes, believe it or not. And we capture that content in 3D, and we use those for educational purposes. And so now you can scale down a volcano with us, by yourself, go all over the place, not touch it, feel it. I mean, I guess you touch it, feel it, but you're not feel it. But now this becomes an educational tool. Now, there's a place for that. Think about how we grew up learning things in school. We go through a textbook or maybe even on the internet, we'll look at things. But now what if you could transport yourself in that space as a classroom to go and experience that? Have an interactive model. Those are the kinds of things where, purpose-driven AR, VR beyond the classroom demo or the show floor demos will start creating this. So that's why, at least I believe that virtual reality will have a place because it has the potential of interactivity because humans like interactivity, and that's.
Mark, do you wish to add?
Sorry, Mark.
No,
I
it's
didn't mean
okay.
to steal your question.
I think the questions are very well answered, but there is a genuine risk of what you said that this will happen. We really have to make sure it doesn't happen by learning the lessons, making sure that devices really are comfortable and easy to use. They really feel relaxed to use, and that the content's there to drive it. And otherwise, VR will do exactly the same thing. We will all have an old headset sat in a drawer that we never use.
Yeah. Stephen, your question?
Good morning, thanks. When I heard some of the thoughts about the infinite context and the almost choose-your-own-adventure style, that really got my mind going. I'm thinking, well, okay, E-Ink does e-readers, of course, very well. And I remember growing up, we had these choose-your-own-adventure stories. Well, this opens up the possibilities for, turning on your e-reader, and maybe some very good AI that somebody's developing somewhere is going to write all of these stories. I thought that was very fascinating. I wonder if you guys had some comments about that, or maybe even on a separate topic. We were talking a lot about the augmented reality, virtual reality. How do you think that E-Ink technology, electrophoretic reflective displays, could fit into all of that?
Stephen was my colleague. What's nice about SID is coming here, everybody's friends and family. I used to work for John Lamanchek. He will never publicly admit it, but Stephen was part of my team when I was at E-Ink. We made electronic paper displays that went on the popular Amazon Kindle and many other devices. That's the background, and that's where the question is. Any of you on the panel can take this question in terms of their product using how can. Is there some way the augmented reality and some of the new technologies you're working on impact?
Perhaps I can make a generalized comment. I think the key is to find where the technology fits to bring some value into people's lives in a way that it doesn't normally. So it may be that E-Ink type technology just doesn't fit with virtual reality, but that's fine, because there's the whole other 99.99% of the world where you can try and find the right niche, the right products that fit with people. And I think that the daylight readability, for example, is a huge benefit over liquid crystal and OLED displays. So go for the outdoor applications, but let's not all focus in on these tiny headsets. Actually, as a liquid crystal guy, the amount of liquid crystal in the headset isn't very much. I like big TVs, so I would say from an E-Ink perspective, do the same. Go for the big size stuff, and let the technologies create these tiny displays.
Thank you. Next question, please.
So, good morning, Philip, my name. I have a two-part question I would like to ask. First part is for the panel in general. So basically, I'm not so long in this business, only a couple of years. And my impression today is that there are so many things going on in parallel. Yeah, we have LCD, of course, OLED coming, QLEDs coming, micro displays coming, so on and so forth. Has it always been like this, that everybody scatters in every direction and it's a lot of discussion? And the second question now is to Mark directly. I'm also in the material business from BASF. Yeah? So how do you deal with that? All these counter-predicting technologies going everywhere.
I'll take your first question. I love it. I hope it continues to be like this. It used to, when I worked for a display company as head of marketing, it used to drive me nuts that we have so many applications, so many things now. But that's how it is. And that's how it should be, because the only way you'll distinguish what is something really good is when you have something that you thought is really good that didn't turn out to be really good, and you learn from that experience. Right? Some of the previous questions also alluded to some of these same kinds of situations. Other comments on the first question?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of these technologies get developed to solve specific problems, right? And sometimes assessing market need can get a little too exciting and maybe a little too adventurous, and you're like, well, if we solve this problem, we can go sell it to everybody else in the world. Only to realize that you haven't quite realized why they're using a certain technology. So now you start to find homes for these technologies, and so then you have all these issues. And in all of this, you end up with these core technologies that tend to solve a larger set of problems, which then take lives of their own, and then they become the central technology for a particular era, right? So I mean, we have the CRTs, and then the LCDs, and the TFT LCDs, and then the OLEDs, and all of these things that are coming about, and then who knows where we'll end up in the next 10 years. But that's natural, right? Because I think there aren't that many, at least I can't point to innovations where somebody goes, you know, we're going to invent this thing and it's going to solve everybody's problem. I mean, people think about it, but I haven't seen those kinds of things. They have this organic evolution to, wow, it seems to be solving a lot of different problems. So I don't think, to Sri's point, actually, I personally like that, because it gives opportunity for those, even the mainstream technologies to leverage from those innovations, and certainly for those innovative technologies to be scaled up because of the stuff. For example, AMOLEDs have scaled up because of the maturity of the TFT technology underneath it that allows us to have these wonderful AMOLED displays. So that I think is very natural.
And in this industry, what you'll also observe is that technologies that you wrote off a few years ago continue to exist. Somebody values it.
Yeah.
I've had the very good fortune of working on TN LCD, STN LCD before there was a single color liquid crystal display. I worked on EL displays. I worked on micro displays, all kinds of e-papers and so forth. I assumed that the thin film electroluminescent display would be gone a long time ago. And it exists today. They still manufacture it today. In small quantity, they do. Our main battle tank uses that display. There's not any other display that can replace it because of the temperature range and so forth. So it's fascinating that some of these technologies come on. Do you want to take the second question?
Yeah. Okay. I think that I think it always has been like that. I think we have very good selective memories as humans, and we remember the things that work and we forget the ones that don't. So that there are certainly a lot of dead projects that we choose to forget because they didn't happen, but they were there. But your second part of the question, how do we manage this? You can try and bet on every horse in the race. I mean, I gave a presentation on Monday from Merck for all our display materials, and we have many, many different display materials. So whether it's OLED materials, liquid crystals, backplane materials, we're working in these areas. I think the key to success is then to change the odds by what you do. So you can't bet on everything. It would be lovely to say, let's make every material perfect, every technology perfect. You have to choose, and when you've chosen, you have to change the odds. You have to make this more realistic. You have to drive things forward in a way that really enables a product of the future. If you don't do that quickly, you're left behind. I know a number of technologies that were better than the existing technologies when they were introduced. People were talking about, ferroelectric liquid crystals, far better than the thematic ones that we were all using. But they weren't in the market, they were behind. And unless you can catch up and overtake, you will get left behind because the rest of the industry moves forward very fast. So, OLED is right now in this cusp where it's starting to take some percentage of the market share, some very high-end devices. I think OLED is established. But the next generation, quantum displays, if you look at this, it's fantastic. A quantum display will be better than any display you ever saw. But can it catch up? Can it keep ahead of OLED and liquid crystal? And that's the key to success. You have to really drive what you're doing forward in a way that makes it successful as fast as possible, get it in the market as fast as possible.
That's so true, isn't it? We'll take one more question from Asad, and after that we'll go into closing.
I think maybe a little bit related and kind of a follow-on, but I'm actually curious if a lot of these panels, whether it's technical or marketing focused, all of us in the industry also tend to fall into this trap of we are going to predict what's next and what's not and what will work. I'm actually curious what the panel thinks, and I work with Justin closely, so we have a hard time too, as to whether it's actually very chaotic, and in physics, chaos is described by sensitivity to initial conditions. So yes, now we know that tablets and iPads are great, and you were saying indispensable tools, but the day before, it wasn't indispensable, and no one knew that it was. VR today is not indispensable until the day it is. 3D TVs people thought would be indispensable, and they didn't. So I'm curious how you guys deal with it in the industry in general, and of course in your field, and whether you agree or have a different look as to maybe we really cannot predict what will and what will not survive, and here we become experts and come later and saying, oh yeah, that was really great, LCD won over plasma because of X, Y, Z, but not on day one.
It did.
So yeah.
So I'll
kind of an open thought about it. It always goes in my head every time I'm in these panels, and we all want to do all of this, but at the end of the day, I'm not sure if we really can.
No, it's a very good question, and this is a challenge that anybody in marketing always has, which is, in some disciplines, you can say, my job is not to make a prediction. My job is not to forecast. But a true marketer has to forecast. Somebody's got to forecast. If you use the word forecasting, right, in the broad industry, people will relate that to weather, right? And I bet you go out there today and look at the top 5 TV stations in this local LA area and look at their forecast. And they've all spent lots and lots of money to build these fancy equipment and do this, and they employ people there. And you'll find that it is not uniform. And then you go outside, this is the reality, right? This is the challenge with the stuff that is well studied and still has a lot of unpredictability. Our industry is way more unpredictable than that. Yet you make the forecast. A couple of years ago, I started looking at all the forecasts that I thought I had made over my career in this industry, and I was wrong at least 50% of the time. For example, I expected OLEDs to completely take over from LCD 10 years ago. I didn't miss that by an inch, by a mile, but you still have to make these forecasts. What I typically do is I look at whether I will use it or not. That's a test for me. Second, what are other similar devices, even if it seems unrelated to a point, but maybe in a different industry and so on, that have had success? You take all of these data points and then you make a prediction, and that's how I do it. I'm sure some of you may have a more scientific or a better way to do this prediction.
I can say, I said, if I could predict the future, I would be sitting on my private island now and not sitting here talking to you. But no offense.
I thought we flew you here from your
yeah, maybe. No, I mean, I think back to my previous comment as well. You have to take some risk. You have to try and predict, but you can't guess. What you can do is try and change the future. You can try and create the opportunity for your predicted future to be the right one. And you can do that by really making the right products, having the right offering that customers want. And we all remember the entrepreneurs who are successful. but I think for every one of them, there's 99 who were equally entrepreneurial, were pushing the devices and weren't successful. And, you know, we should also give praise to those 99 who weren't so successful, because they also create this push for the future. So grab what you've got, push it forward, and really, you know, feel confident that you can achieve something in the market. And if everything goes in your favor, you'll be very lucky.
And I think we've talked a lot about it today, which is, you know, all of us have said this ability to create something because we can is irrelevant if they're other end of the spectrum, which is the true other end of the spectrum. Should we?
Yes.
And I think that's what we as an industry have to look at. What are the needs of the consumers? And I think, Bahar, you said, you know, you wake up every day and the first thing you think of is the consumer and the user. And that to me is the most important thing that we can do going forward, because the intelligence and the capabilities in this industry are mind-blowing. We could do millions of things, but if we're not tying it to a need and predicting what the user is going to, how they're going to react and what their needs are and how we integrate all those things coming together. And that's why I say it's a puzzle piece, because you have to build the bridge of those two things coming together. And those are the things you bet on. Yeah. Those are the things that you say, here's why we're going to actually move this forward. Here's why we're going to advance this technology. Here's why we're going to take this concept, this idea, this capability, and go spend our time, resources, money, and energy versus something else, because of the user. And as long as we keep in mind the user and the consumer and what's going to end up being the person that takes it and does something with it, you give yourself much better odds. You know, you still are going to fail 70% of the time, but you're going to have a much better chance of being successful with whatever you do.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to go to my last question, and what I'd like to ask all of you is, as we picked this panel, and I had the opportunity to look at each of your background and relate to your success, I'm very inspired by each of you and what each of you have accomplished. But I believe that success leaves clues. So I want to figure out what are those. I want you to help me find those clues. So I'd like for each of you to say a couple of habits that you follow even today and have followed most of your career that you believe is a significant contributor to your success, outside of the degrees that you have and the companies you work for and so on. We can start with you, Mark.
Okay, I'll keep it very short. I think persistence is absolutely key, and don't listen to people who tell you they did this before and it isn't going to work. Yeah, ignore them. Everything is different. Tomorrow is different to yesterday. The whole environment's different. Keep going. Keep pushing your ideas. Believe in it.
That's awesome. Thank you. Shri?
Yeah, to me, it's related to what Mark said. Execution is key. I mean, vision is definitely very important, but taking it to the finish line is, if you don't take that to execution, you might have a lot of ideas and visions and initiatives, but if you can't really execute on it, and relentless execution doesn't mean anything.
What is that discipline that you have that causes you to be successful?
I mean, it could be any small thing. It's about investing your time and effort and taking it to that. I mean, even personal life, if you're going through this home renovation, and it's just small things, you got to see through and invest your time, and otherwise you can have a vision and you can have any kind of thought.
Yeah, thank you. Justin, what habits do you have? What are things that you...
Well, first of all, luck. For my career, it's been, I've been very lucky to be a part of really cool stuff and really cool companies, great people. But I think the never give up. When you have a vision of what you are doing, you have to believe in it. That's first and foremost. If you don't believe in it, if you're not the cheerleader, if you're not the one saying, this is where I want to go with this, nobody else will follow, nobody else will do it. The second thing is, throughout my whole career, whether I've been in sales, whether I've been in marketing, whether I've been in product development, whatever it is, look at things from the business perspective. We so many times get so focused on what your discipline is. I've always throughout my career tried to look at things and say, how does this apply in the market? Okay, how are we going to sell it? Okay, what is how much resources is it going to take from R&D? Okay, what is the supply chain application? And I think it makes us better business people regardless of what discipline we're in, whether it be technology, marketing, sales, operations. If we take the time to look across the entire business and say, how is it going to affect, even if it's not our core competency, ask the questions. It makes a better product. It makes a better program. It makes a stronger business overall. So,
Bahar, what are a couple of habits that you've had, that you have today, and you've had before, that you believe contributed to your success?
The two, I suppose, in specific, because over the years, those habits and practices have changed. But persistence, and I will say that persistence is important. But the one that I keep coming back to, and it's hard to do, but you have to make yourself work at it, is really focusing on the other person's perspective. And I just don't mean the person, but the industry, because if you can get good at understanding the other perspective, then you could get good at understanding yourself. And then you understand where your strengths are, your weaknesses are. That helps you bring the team that you need around you, that helps you execute the strategies that you can be successful at, and then move forward. So that to me, at least, has been my my habit and guiding principles. I work very hard at it. Am I always successful? No. But I work very hard at understanding the other person's perspective.
Thank you so much. I think that is very insightful, so true. Thank you all. Let's give a big hand to our panel.
Thank you.